people think competition's a bad thing. I think the more competition that comes in that then helps flesh out a category is a good thing.
Yeah.
You just have to make sure that your game is on. Just commit, go all in, right? Don't think about it. Don't kind of want it. Don't take your time to think about what you want to do, right? Let's say you want to be the next stationary queen of New York, okay? Plan it, get it down, and commit. When those negative emotions come in, when that negative thought track comes in, I go back to what has worked for the last 30 years of my life or 25 years of my life. It's get up, eat, water, gym. Get moving.
So you heard a few bits from Christopher Wolstenholme in action, and I think you can tell this is not a straight line founder story. In this episode, we dig into what it takes to build something new when there's no obvious category for it. We talk about what you do when the universe gut punches you, why relationships beat automation, and why you need aggressive patience as a solopreneur. This is Unfiltered Solopreneur. Enjoy the show. Welcome to a new episode of Unfiltered Solopreneur. I'm your host, Nikhil. My next guest traded a life that included serving royalty on super yachts and hosting dinner parties for the Beckhams to find out what happens when you try to fit 8 grams of protein and a laid-back Australian vibe into a single can of vodka protein water. Christopher, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I need you to follow me around and give that starting intro to everyone I meet. That's good for the ego.
Oh, I'm glad you like it. And, it's like one of those theme songs, which I've always wanted to have, that accompanies people in the movies when they go anywhere, right?
Right.
So I can be that for you.
The narrator in the background just hyping you up. Yeah, I'll take one of those any day of the week.
So we can record that segment and I'm happy to share it with you. So let's get into, you have a fascinating story with lots of twists and turns. Now you've had a pretty remarkable arc, right? Gordon Ramsay's maze in London, super yachts in Monaco, restaurants in Atlanta. But I want to zoom in on one moment. You're 29.
Sure.
You've picked the wrong business partner. You're sitting on $100,000 of debt. And you decide to sell everything you own, take $8,000 in euros, and book a one-way ticket to Nice. Now, at that age, most people are looking for a safe job to dig out of a hole. What was running through your head the night before you got on that plane?
The night before was great. I mean, I have this tendency to just commit, right? My thing is, if you're going to do something, just commit, right? Go all in. Don't half it. Don't do this. Don't do that. Just go all in. So that night before, I was, living at a friend's place. I was on a air mattress in their spare room. They were going to drive me to the airport. I'd done all the goodbyes. I'd packed everything up and sent everything to my mother's. What I hadn't sold, obviously, right? I sold pretty much everything. And I was kind of just ready to go. It was great. I've done all the hard work. I've got the passports. I've, done the training. I know where I'm landing. I've got the money. I'm pulled out of everything. Now I'm just ready to go. Let's get on the plane and let's make this happen. It was kind of the feeling. Yeah, no nerves, just ready to go.
So it was like cutting the cord in a sense, because you didn't quite know what was in front of you, but you knew what you were sort of leaving behind, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, I was very optimistic for the future. Okay, let's put it that way. When you book a one-way ticket, you have to be. You can't be afraid of what you're about to do. You need to be really ready to go. And at the time, like you said, I had a lot of debt. I had the wrong business partner. I just pulled out of that business. I was really sort of just grinding the hamster wheel. But I knew I already had friends that were living in Europe. They were already on other super yachts. They had openly said, Chris, this is amazing. Like we are loving life over here. Your skill set would be amazing. You just need to get here. And I had always wanted to work on super yachts for years and years and years. And I just never made the jump. And I think I was kind of forced into, well, you've got one of two options. You can get that comfortable job and start ticking away at that debt, or you can swing big. And, not a lot of people know this, but on super yachts, the pay's fantastic. It's all in euros and it's tax free. Like, this is the other thing. So whatever you get paid, you don't pay taxes because you're in international water. So you keep all of it. So when you then transfer euros to Australian dollars, I in under 6 months, I paid off 100,000 Australian dollars because I got a job pretty much straight away, grinded it out, got a proper gig, started making tips, doing all those things. And I was so excited to just get there. I just wanted to get there. Like yeah.
Yeah.
No fear, no anything. Excitement for what was to come.
And that's one of the beauties of being in your 20s, right? You can
Right. Yeah, no kids. I don't have a girlfriend. I'm
right.
single and free. This is the time I should be doing stuff like that.
Nothing tying you down. And, in America, I think they call it swinging for the fences. So that was literally one of those. And I did not know that about super yachts. That's very interesting because I know the UN's the only other job that I know that you don't have to pay taxes because it's not in, you're not in the jurisdiction. But that's really great. But you still it didn't sound like you had a job lined up. Your friends had just told you this.
No.
So you were still taking that chance and leap of faith because you could have landed up there and they would have been like, oh, we were just saying that. We didn't think you'd really show up.
There is a certain degree of, you have to have a fair bit of belief in yourself and your skill set, right? I can sell myself. I can do this. I can do that. The money won't run out, right? You can't have in the back of your mind constantly, I'm going to go broke and I'm really going to have nothing. You've just got to go all in. And that's the only way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that thread will be running through a lot of what we're going to talk about now in terms of that faith in yourself. So now the other thing you told me was this brutal story about being 4 weeks from opening your drive-through liquor store in Atlanta with the funding, renovations, the stock already in place. And then you found out the license was denied because you were 7 feet too close to a liquor store, right?
Yeah.
Now, again, a lot of people would have taken that as the universe saying, go back to what you know. This is not for you. How did you process that disappointment in a way that allowed Mate to come out of it?
So I think a lot of people, like you said, the universe just told me no. I remember finally selling. I had these big fridges that I was trying to sell, and I put them on Facebook Marketplace. Ended up selling them all, and I remember I had to take a loss. Right, I couldn't sell them for what I bought. People just don't do that. So I had a spreadsheet so that I could apply the losses to our personal taxes, and I remember putting in the last numbers and the little Excel spreadsheet giving me that last number at the bottom. And I'm not a crier, right? It's not often that I cry, but I remember sitting on my couch and just for at least a minute or two, I was alone in the house, nobody else is here, and I just had to cry. And it's heartbreaking when you put so much effort, so much time, a lot of sleepless nights already. I signed the house up, right, to get the SBA loan to be able to finance the business. So there'd been a lot of, not anxiety, but perhaps being a little bit unsure of, am I making the right decision? Is this the right way to go? How are we going to do this, et cetera, et cetera. So, when that all came through, and again, thankfully I had some great people in my corner with the leases and everything else that I was able to pull out from. But again, I paid money I'm never going to get back. And I just sort of sat there and went, wow, like that's a gut punch. That's through no fault of my own. That's the other thing. If I could have looked in the mirror and gone, okay, dude, you made some mistakes. Okay. You've got to be real with yourself. You didn't do things the right way and it's your fault. I could eat that, right? But this wasn't my fault. So I remember sort of sitting there, and Friday afternoon, the wife comes back from work and I said, look, I don't know what meetings you've got on this afternoon, but I'm not super happy. I think if I make you happy, I'll eventually start smiling, right? Are you up for, grabbing a slice of pizza and having a couple of beers and just let me get this out, right? And that's why I would hope, that's why we marry people to have as our person, because when it's a bad day for them, I'm there. And when it's a bad day for me, she's there. And, it's that classic, it's not always 50-50. Sometimes it's 90-10. Sometimes it's 60-40, right? It's never 50-50 as a general rule. And she was like, yeah, let's go. I'll cancel it. Let's go. And I think having somebody that was so supportive on one side, that was going, you tried everything. You tried to call the senator for Georgia to try
Yeah.
and get this reversed. You did everything you could, and it wasn't your fault. And then on the other side was, well, what do you want to do now? Like
Right.
you've got everything open to you, right? You protected me, you protected the house, you have pulled out, you've got no fines, you've paid everything you needed to, everything's done again, right? So we're starting from zero again. You're not,
Right.
forget the money, but you're starting from zero again. What do you want to do? And I think having that person be able to talk it through with as well, especially because I didn't have a business partner, but to talk through and be that person for me is, and I've thanked her a million times, and I will thank her another million. But I think that was if we're calling a something through that time period, she was my rock. And I think I hope everybody gets the opportunity to have that person, not the pain, but the person,
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
be there for them in that time. So
Yeah, and I think that's so critical, right? What you said, and like you said, it's a lot easier to deal with mistakes if you've made them. But this was like, as you said, it literally was the universe. That there was nothing you did wrong. There was
right.
nothing you missed. There's nothing you would somebody screwed up somewhere, and that it had nothing to do with you, and you still had to pay the price for it. And I think there are op- situations in business that you will face that, especially when you're on your own, right? And I always talk about, it's one, having a set of advisors who are external to the business, which you touched on a minute ago, but you also need that support system within the house, right, to make sure that you can sort of cushion some
Yep.
of those blows. And I don't think it's an either or. On this journey, I think you need both, right, to have that outside perspective of people who are friends, advisors, mentors, and then having the supportive partner or spouse who will also be there when you need them, and in those moments of darkness, which we all have.
Yeah, especially as a solopreneur, I think it's,
Yeah.
we see all these news articles of people raising hundreds of millions of dollars and having all these teams and having huge people and sectors and everything else around them. And I think a lot of people talk about how lonely it is to be that person at the top with all those people underneath them. I don't think it's said enough as just someone like me, where I came from the restaurant world, hundreds of people in my restaurant visiting and me leading a big team, to just me, just rattling
Yeah.
around in my own brain. And I think there's, yeah, each job has its own trials and tribulations, but certainly I think as a solopreneur, as a solo business owner, it you don't get to palm off any of these emotions. You need to process them and keep moving forward.
Yeah, and have the support system there to be able to help you when you need them, right? I mean,
Right.
because you're right. Otherwise, we're locked in our own head with the whiteboard. That's not going to get you anywhere. So ultimately,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
and yeah. So touching on that though, and you said something else to me which I thought was really interesting, in the same sort of realm. You said 2 days before we chatted the last time, you said you'd woken up and you were like, you felt like, I think your words were, I'm done with America. I
Oh
want to
yeah.
go home to Australia. Now, I think a lot of solopreneurs know that feeling in the morning, right? Even if they don't say it out loud sometimes. So what does that morning actually look like for you, and what pulls you back? Tell us a little bit. Is it, what you described, or is it something else that keeps you going when you have those
No, it's
days?
definitely something else. So I would say, so I'll explain for the bit, be a little bit clearer for everyone to sort of understand, for anyone who's listening. There are times, and it's happened since we spoke, right? It
Mhm.
probably, I would say it probably happens almost. once a week, once every 2 weeks, I would say, where through no major external reasons, no big blow ups, no any of these, you just wake up and you'll be lying there, your head will still be on your pillow, and you'll go, "What am I doing here? Like, why do I put myself through this?" Everybody hates on a 9 to 5, but very um it's a very calming life to know you're
Yeah.
guaranteed the same amount of money every single week, and it's going to come through as normal, and it's going to be very consistent. Okay. I think when that happens for me, especially when I'm laying on the pillow and I wake up, my alarm usually goes off anywhere between 6:30 and 7 in the morning. Um, when I'm feeling that way, this is where perspective beats motivation. Okay. Because I am not motivated in any way, sense of the manner to get moving. I'm just not.
Yeah.
So this is where that perspective and almost routine, base level routine comes into play. Get up, bathroom, downstairs, water, breakfast, caffeine if that's your thing. Um, Gym clothes, into the gym. You need to get the wheels moving. And I think
Yeah.
what happens is people really just lay in that blanket of negative emotion and don't climb out. And then you spiral, right? You that
Yeah.
doesn't get you anywhere. So I think for me, when those negative emotions come in, when that negative thought track comes in, I go back to what has worked for the last 30 years of my life or 25 years of my life. It's get up, eat, water, gym, get moving. Get outside, have a fresh air, go for a walk, touch some grass, do something. Just don't sit on the couch or put the blanket back over or roll back over or do whatever. Get up and get moving, because what happens is your emotions start to change, right? The endorphins
Mhm.
start to get moving. You get hungry. You now that you're up and moving, okay, well, I'll sit in front of the laptop for a second, and then I'll look at my list here and I'll go, oh, I do need to send that email. And I'll send those reminder emails and I'll follow up here. And then sure enough, in the next hour, maybe two, a success will come through. Right.
Yeah.
Chris, it was great. Thank you so much. I'll look forward to seeing you Thursday. Book it in. Let's meet. Let's do this. Let's do that. But if I didn't send those emails, if I didn't get moving, if I didn't sit in front of my laptop, if I didn't get back to work, I'd still be in bed laying in that why am I here mentality.
Yeah.
And again, I'm Australian. I love my country. I want to move back there in the next probably 5-ish years, right? Maybe 10, depending on what happens with the company. But that doesn't help me right now. So
Hmm.
I've got to get moving. And I think if people just get moving, don't stay in that negative mindset, you would discover that it goes away faster and faster. And that's why, let's say I wake up at 7, by 9:30, those feelings are gone,
Yeah.
right? Because you
Yeah.
learn to get rid of those negative talk tracks faster and faster.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I love the honesty, because you're right. We all go through that, right? Anyone who tells you otherwise on this solo journey
You're a
is
liar.
is BSing. Exactly. Yeah, full of shit. But yeah, and for me, and I think for each person, it's also you kind of have to figure out what that thing is to pull you out, right? To have that system. I have something called a pat on your back folder, where I go and look at
Sure.
the things, the feedback clients have given me, or the engagements that I've had, so things, or an email I received from someone who was so grateful for the work that we did. And that sort of reminds me again that, that what I'm doing, I'm making a difference, I'm making an impact, and that, there are good and bad days, like you said, right? But the key is not to dwell on it, right? To get
Yes.
stuck in that spiral where the hour becomes the day, becomes the week,
Right.
becomes the month, right? That is really important. So, no, I think that's really important. So I want to shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about brand building and
Sure.
marketing. So you're building what you called a one of one product in the US, right? So when you say vodka protein water, it's a totally new category, right? That doesn't fit into any existing mental bucket for consumers. So I'm curious, 2 years in, are you still having to explain the category, or are people starting to get it and find you?
the category itself. So I nicknamed it a wellness adjacent category, um,
Okay.
because I have protein in my RTD, but I'm definitely not healthy. Okay. So it's kind of adjacent. It's in the same vein as, bars are now having sports in them, but more than just
Hmm.
pool or darts or something. You can actually go bowling while you're having a drink, or you can do VR, or you can do, there's so many different sectors. Pickleball is a wonderful example of this. And there's also a couple of years in, there is now some more brands, more products that are expanding this area with me. So there's a couple of brands that are doing electrolyte alcohol RTD styles, zero carbohydrate styles, zero sugar styles, all very wellness adjacent. And I think the more people think competition's a bad thing, I think the more competition that comes in that then helps flesh out um, a category is a good thing.
Yeah.
You just have to make sure that your game is on. You have to make sure that you're doing well. And that is where the excitement for me comes in, because with more players, more people talking means greater understanding. Because then people
Yeah.
can start to go, oh, yeah, I had an electrolyte alcohol RTD the other day. You're just a protein version. They already have an understanding of what it is you're trying to sell. If they've never heard of it before, and this weekend was a great example, I did some tastings, and one poor couple, they were like, I am so confused as to what it is you're talking about. Right. So once we talked through it, we got an understanding. They really kind of fleshed it out and we worked it out. So I think we're now from where we were 2 years ago, where I had to explain it to everybody, absolutely everybody. I think now we're at a point where more and more people are understanding the adjacent component, um,
Hmm.
and are open to that marketing style. Again, it just takes time. These things take time. And by one of my old owners of a restaurant group that I used to work for here in Atlanta, he would say, when you feel like you're repeating yourself is the time people actually start listening. And he was right. We'd say something 10 times, and then the next 10 times people would be like, oh, I didn't know about this. I've only said it 10 times previously. So I think, we're now definitely uh, getting into an era, and I think next year is going to be even better. Right? I think next year is going to be simply outstanding for this category, and it's going to be even less explaining on my end of this type of category, and that's where the real fun marketing begins, because now I need to be less informative, less teacher, less classroom style, and more just
Yeah.
fun. Right. So I think we're definitely headed in the right direction, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah, and you're right. And I think that's a very important point, right? Because when you're building a new category, there you have to start with the education component before you even get to the product. And so almost like there's double duty that your marketing and your outbound has to do, right? Initially. And I agree. And I think it's good to have competition because every new competitor helps grow the category and all of you
Absolutely.
benefit. So I think that's a good thing, right? But as you said, as long as you have a game on, because they don't want them to eat up all the share once it
Right.
gets big enough. So when you say adjacent, though, tell me a little bit more about that. So it sounds like you're not just selling a new drink. Are you actually selling a new drinking occasion? So when does someone pick up a Mate, or if someone's handing it to me, what do they say to me?
So I think it's interesting because you're not in the beverage world, right? So I really like this question in this conversation, because it will allow others that aren't in the beverage industry to sort of be able to pick up on it. So what we're finding is, and all the news articles are out there. You'll be able to do one search and you'll find a whole litany of them, where people are saying Gen Z, um, and basically I'm a millennial. Whatever the next two after me are, is they're kind of not drinking, right?
Yeah,
They're
they're
really
not.
not consuming in the same way we did. And
No drinking, no smoking, no sex. Yeah,
what are they even living for?
I don't know.
Um, um,
Sorry, carry on.
No, you're totally fine. I had just as much fun with it as you did. So I think what people are doing now is, and there's a lot of posts on LinkedIn as well, where they are now drinking to match the occasion. Okay, so what are we doing this morning? Well, we're going out for, you and I, when we were growing up, yeah, we go out for breakfast and drink a pitcher of mimosas and, ride that buzz all the way through Sunday. These kids are now, well, we're going for a run. Okay, well, what do we drink after a run? Okay, well, we're going to go get coffee and a croissant. That's an occasion. Okay. Well, I've got a friend's birthday. Well, what do we drink at birthdays? Oh, we get a bottle of champagne. Okay. Um, we are out at a concert. Well, now I'm looking at drinking an RTD because I don't really want beer. We're sitting around a fireplace. Well, we're going to drink bourbon. So they've kind of pigeonholed a lot of drink categories into the environment that they're going to be in. So when we talk about wellness adjacent, especially Mate and these other RTDs with electrolytes, I've made some heavy investments into pickleball here in Georgia.
Uh-huh.
And I've had text messages from people that I used to work with, the guys that run it, the guys that do all this sort of pickleball stuff. They have openly said to me, we love it because we're having a couple of drinks, but we don't feel gross and bloated. We're not getting drunk, right? We're just having a couple, but we're playing sports at the same time. And we feel good about it because I'm getting my protein in as well. So they're now drinking for the occasion rather than just to have a drink. And I think that's a big, definitely a lot of the bigger companies are starting to make that shift to understanding that now. Because what's interesting is one Google search will tell you $800 million wiped from the alcohol market. Well,
Yeah.
I hate to break it to you, but they're actually drinking more in liquid than we did. It's just what they're buying is cheaper. So my 4-pack, $12.99 for the 4-pack, is 1.2 liters of fluid. Okay. A bottle of Jim Beam, which is 40 bucks maybe, but 750 mil. So there's less liquid for more money. And what's happened is I have more liquid for less money, and that's what they're drinking. So it's a couple of things multifold, and that wellness adjacent where we don't want to be hungover. We still want to have a couple of drinks. We're going out for a bike ride. We are on the boat. We're going fishing. We want to throw something in the cooler that makes us feel good. We are catering to that environment. And that's where the wellness adjacent comes in because, yeah, we're still looking after ourselves, but we still want to drink too. It's kind of giving both.
That's really interesting because there's an adjacency. It's almost like three different categories, right? You have the alcohol without, as you said, the bad parts of it with the hangover and how you feel crappy and, bloaty, all of the other kind of stuff. You have the social part of it, but you're also not sacrificing the health part of it, right? So you can actually do it on the court. You can do it, at the physical activity. You don't have to physically go to a bar or, and beer, of course, has its own disadvantages. Being not a beer drinker, I hope that's not sacrilege to an Australian, but
I own a vodka protein water company. I didn't even start a beer company, so you're totally fine.
Yeah. So the other thing I wanted to touch on is the name Mate.
Sure.
Now, that has such a clear brand personality. When I think of it, I think of Australian, social, casual, friendly. But then I noticed you also talk about it as a functional beverage for the active modern consumer, right?
Correct.
Quality and function without compromise, I think, is the words that you used. Now, that feels like two different energies to me. There's the Aussie sort of, invitation, and then there's the functional promise. So which one is doing more of the heavy lifting for you, or which one has been working better? I'm curious.
So I'd say we're still at 50-50. Definitely still at 50-50. I think because I'm so present in the field, people go, oh, you're Australian. I get it now. And one of the things I tell people when I started the company, the easiest thing to sell is me. Right? So when I'm out and I've got the accent, I've got the mannerisms and the words and everything else, it just makes sense. The other thing, we wanted a name that was short, sharp, to the point. Okay. I didn't want this long ode to something that was this, that was that was whatever. Because when I'm going to be selling vodka protein water, I need the main name to be
Yeah.
really
Not
easy
add
to
to that.
remember.
Right.
So Mate
Yeah.
just became it. When it comes to that adjacent side, now a lot of people probably don't understand. Australians live a very pre-work life. Okay, we're less night owls. We're more early risers. So that 4 a.m. to 6:30, 7 a.m. before we need to get ready for work is a very popular time. And if you look up TikTok or Instagram or whatever, there are a lot of people that come from America or Europe or wherever. They go to Australia and they're shocked that to watch the sunrise, you'll see 100 Aussies on the beach. We'll have gone
Wow.
for a run. We'll have grabbed our coffee already. Most coffee shops in Australia open by 5 a.m. because
Wow.
we have such a heavy pre-work lifestyle. And yeah, we
Yeah.
love a drink, right? We'll finish work 5 o'clock. We'll head to the pub. We'll have a bunch of drinks, but we're home in bed by 9, especially during the week. And most restaurants, their kitchen closes at 9 p.m. So we are that real dichotomy where we live hard, but we play hard at the same time. Right? So it's definitely, my friends back home laugh because they go, "Of course of course you made the alcohol protein, the guy that's always in the gym, that loves to be active outside, that walks around barefoot, but you also love a drink, but you also want to stay fit and healthy on the other side." So I would say that both are half and half. I have made this company so that if Coca-Cola, for example, turned up tomorrow, I could just hand it over to them. It's not me personally, it's Mate Vodka Protein Water. It's a company within itself. It just works that
Yeah.
I happen to be pushing it now because I've got the accent. But Coca-Cola could buy this, keep the name, keep the branding, and still drive the push without, sacrificing any of the personality.
Yeah, no, I see that, and I mean, oh, they could take one or the other side of it also, right? Because I mean, they both sort of work to me,
Yeah.
and it also goes back to the adjacency that you talked about of the casualness and the seriousness, right? That's kind of what I get from looking at it from a brand lens. It's like you said, I think you encapsulated it well with the Aussie who can let their hair down and be serious. So you've got both those sides
Yeah,
um,
absolutely. Yeah.
built into it. Yeah. So you come from a hospitality world. You touched on that a minute ago, where everything is sort of high touch, polished, detail driven, and now you're building a self-funded beverage brand, right? Now that's scrappy, it's messy, it's constantly imperfect. So has the hospitality perfectionism that you probably carry been an asset, or has it been something you have to actively fight, where you have to sort of let go and, as they say, good enough is the enemy of perfect? I mean, perfect is the enemy of good enough.
Yeah. So I would say the hospitality element, I have done hospitality for, I'm 41 now, so 24 years ish, right? Long time, long time. Started when I was 14, long time. And I think having spent this much time and being as successful as I was, knowing what to pull out of that hospitality life and knowing where to put aside some of the others really came in handy. So, as an example, a store that I am in here in Marietta, the GM turned around and went, "I haven't had service from a beverage rep like this in a very long time. This is amazing." So I think using the elements that people really like that are missing in various other areas, right? You're not going to find Miller Lite on a golf course with, the guy that's heavily invested in it.
Yeah.
Totally understand. It just is what it is. But you are going to find the small guy like me who's going to go above and beyond with the service. I'm going to have cards and I can tell you about it and I can, do all these sort of things. And, we spoke about me getting to meet with the COO of Twin Peaks because I took that time to be able to chat with him so that he understood. So having that attention to the person, attention to the service element of how we provide, all positives. Now, there are there was a box run that I did that's right behind me here. We don't have this box anymore. We've changed the box, but the first run we did, we've got an 8 gram on the backside, and the yellow was filled in, so it was a block 8, while the other 3 were actual 8s with the centers taken out, and it really got under my skin. And I was like, that's not. I went back to check the approvals. I approved this. I'd done this. I told, and it just did slip through. And my wife just turned around and went, Chris, in the overall scheme of things, the only person that's going to notice that is you.
Right. Yeah.
Consider it limited edition. Fix it on the next run. So I think,
Right.
and that was early on, right? So I've obviously evolved past that sort of stuff now. But again, where we talk about having that person with us to help pull us out of that hole, you need to let go some of that. You need to accept that ability to accept that it isn't perfect is paramount. And even the big guys do it. High Noon mixed up with Celsius. There was Celsius with High Noon liquid and alcohol High Noon liquid in Celsius cans, right? So mistakes still happen even for the $1 billion guys, right? $2 billion brands still have that mistake. But I think as a small brand from hospitality, pulling those elements that people love and then reminding yourself, just like when you wake up and you don't want to be here, reminding yourself to get moving and to leave that in the past is tantamount. And it's a learned skill. It's a practiced skill. It's not something that you're great at every day. But yeah, there are definitely elements to my hospitality service and devotion and hardworking and providing an experience, with my tastings and my events and my table giveaways and how I give to the end consumer that are very hospitality focused. And people like it. People love it.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, because it's sort of like we all have these strengths or even like heuristics that we collect over the years, right? But it's important to sort of point them in the right direction, right? And not let them become sort of hindrances. So again, like your wife pulling you out of the things that, in the grand scheme don't matter, I think is really important, because again, strengths can become things that just become obstacles when you're a one-person business and you're sort of in your own head, right?
Yeah,
So
because you don't
I think
have
that's
that
really
person
important.
sitting just across the
Yeah,
office and be like, "Hey, man, chill out."
give it a break.
It's not
Yeah.
that big of a deal. We will survive this. Whereas if you're by yourself, you're sitting there staring at the box, going, "Why did this happen? Why is this going on? Why?" Hey, deep breath, deep breath. It's okay. In the
Yeah.
overall scheme of things, it's okay.
I've had to learn that the hard way too. So just like getting things out there is more important than getting them perfect. So the other thing I love what you just talked about in terms of your, the people part of it, right? Relationships and, from your hospitality, you just said, you mentioned the liquor store, talked about a rep never treating him that way. So I'm curious now. First, I'd love you to tell your cricket story, because I know the first case of Mate you told me was
Sure.
ever
Yeah.
sold in a straw actually happened through a relationship, right? So I guess my question is, in a world that's obsessed with digital funnels and scaling and CRM, I feel like most solopreneurs miss that old school showing up in person outreach, right? So could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the story Nikhil is talking about is um, everyone has to start somewhere. We all have to start in one store. Right? You need one store to be able to get a second one, because you need that second
Yeah.
one to go, well, do you have a store already? Yes. And this is what they've done. Right. It just helps. So the first store was my local liquor store. Some Indian guys run it. They're same owners still. And I walked in and, I'd been buying from them for the last couple of years and I'm Australian, they're Indian, we love cricket. We're basically two of the best teams in the world. In fact, we were both against each other in the World Cup. And I just essentially turned around. We had a chat about some cricket and whatever. And, I pulled the owner aside and said, look, I need some help, right? I've created this thing. I need somewhere to sell it first. Just grab a case of each flavor, put it on the floor. I don't even care if it goes on the shelf. Just put it somewhere, and let's see how it does. And because I'd cultivated this relationship, and I'd spent money, and I'd bought ice from him, and I'd always been polite and done all of these things, he was like, "Yeah, we'll buy a case." He's like, "But if it doesn't work, you need to understand that we're not going to keep buying something that just sits here.
Sure.
Right? We're a small store, and I can't argue with that. That you've given me the first step forward, and we're still in that same store today. 2.5-ish years in, where I'm doing a tasting there in, I don't know, 2 weeks maybe. But it's about that relationship that you have. Now, on that other side, I think everybody is so focused on AI and driving national sales channels and all these sort of things. And I think, me personally, I think AI is a great tool, but to me, it's like a calculator, right? It's very cold and impassionate. And I think a lot of people have implemented AI to send responses, which is a terrible idea, because somebody connected with me on LinkedIn and their AI sent 3 responses to the same question in different messages. And I was like, "Hey man, you've asked me this already." And I get that and then it clued on. Congratulations, you got AI, right? But I think by really getting in there, giving them a hoodie, right? Shaking their hand, telling the story, investing in them, then they start to sell it for you, right? I went to a store in Woodstock. They're a wonderful group. And, one of the ladies there, she's much loved. And, people will go, "Oh, what do you recommend?" She's like, "This. He's a local guy. He's this, that, the next. We've tasted them. My favorite's this. I think people's favorite's this. This is this." She actively becomes a salesperson that I don't pay on my product already. And in that world of AI, I think that true human connection is what we're going to start to crave. There's a point where we get too clever. And AI, yes, it's clever. Yes, it's doing its thing. Yes, it's this. Yes, it's that. But the amount of emails and inbox, requests I get saying, "We do restaurant funding." Well, I don't own a restaurant anymore, or work in one for that matter. So if you'd taken 2 minutes to actually have a look, you'd notice that. Or a quick Google search, you'd notice that. And to me, that's just lazy. That's pure laziness. I'm gonna get AI to send 10,000 of these, and if I get 100 back, that's a win. That's just lazy to me.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. And I do believe that the human touch, the human intervention is going to become more valued and more valuable as people dive into this, right? And talking about your example, but I think solopreneurs underestimate that relationship building piece, right? Especially in the early stages, I think those are the building blocks we tend to miss. And those are the most important ones, because like you said, if you have that relationship, then they become your salespeople, right? Yeah. That is the greatest asset any company can ever have. And talking about your example, I had this yesterday. I had somebody write me, pitching me to be on my podcast. Mm-hmm. I wrote back to them. The person responded, trying to argue with me. Then today I get a fresh email from that person, like we've not corresponded.
Right.
Talking to me about it was completely like it was like the conversation back and forth did not happen yesterday. So I know exactly what you mean. And the other thing that drives me nuts, sorry to rant now that you got this going, is when people take a snippet of your LinkedIn, right?
Oh, yeah.
From like 15 years ago, like you said, and love what you're doing here. And I'm like, well, I haven't done that in 15 years. So
Yeah,
yeah, I know.
that's not me anymore. Actually,
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. And like you said, if you took 30 seconds to have a look, you'd kind of know what the person was doing right now. Right.
Yeah,
So
I think it's
I'm
going to
with you.
become more and more prevalent where
Yeah.
people want that human touch. And I get
Yeah.
where solopreneurs can get stuck behind the laptop here and the blinkers can kind of go on. And I know look, it's scary to walk into a store and just cold call and ask somebody. But if you can master the art of, and it doesn't matter what you do, I don't care what industry you're in, you can apply this to anything. I'm just applying this to mine. I walk into that store, ask for the manager or the buyer. If they go, it's me, and I go, my immediate response is not to dive into why you should buy my product. It's, hi, my name's Chris. I own this.
Yeah.
Shake their hand, be a human. And I think, email and text and that sort of thing has made a lot of people really cold where people just don't reply. And
Yeah.
uh, I think a lot of people forget that there's another human on the other end. And a
Yeah.
10-second
No,
email isn't going to kill you.
no, no, I agree. Versus, a million automated tests. And to be fair, there are lots of things that can and should be automated in terms of admin and, that you can do behind the scenes. But I always say, don't use AI as a substitute for you,
Right.
right? That is where I draw the line. So I
Yeah.
think we're on the same page, and
We are
maybe we're
definitely on
just,
the same page.
yeah. And I just saw today that Gen Z actually now has an 18% favorability rating for AI. They've totally soured on it.
Yeah,
So I don't know
I
if
mean, I'm
you,
not surprised.
yeah.
I'm really
So,
not.
so the other thing I wanted to ask you is you spent 13 months on R&D with the
Mhm.
beverage formulation company before you had a single can to sell, right? So for a self-funded solopreneur, that's a long time burning cash with no revenue coming in. So how did you get through those 13 months without losing the plot? And what would you do differently if you were starting over?
Um, so you go work. Go and work in your field while you're building. I
Yeah.
think people think it's either or, it's and or. It's
Yes.
you need to just do both because while you're out there, you can tell everybody you're doing this. Right? The more people you tell, the better. And I think, people get stuck in this idea of, I'm going to keep it to myself until it's absolutely ready. And I'm going to keep, nobody's going to steal your idea. Do you know why? Because they don't want to do the work. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
It's the most basic level of that. So, I think be realistic. I think people talk about how busy they are. Be realistic of how busy you actually are. Like, let's start there. Um, and realize that you can do a lot in a short period of time if you get off your phone, right? If you
Yeah.
don't sleep in, if you don't watch TV, if you don't do all of these things, you can get a lot done. And working kept my sanity going while I'm doing the R&D. It keeps the money coming in, right? So that you so you're not stretched and you can continue to pay for things and, the bills are covered. Basically, making sure that you can pull that pressure valve, that release valve, um, with something that is good for your mental health. And for me, it was working. I love working. The business as you are in research and development, especially for me, I used a beverage formulation company. So I mean, I was only spending maybe 20 hours a week on my own company as we're building that growth there. And so it's a little bit different. So it doesn't hurt for me to spend 40 hours in a restaurant, right?
Mhm.
So I think it's me personally, I wouldn't change anything the way that I did it. I like the way that I did it. I used somebody, I legally got it completely correct. All these bits and pieces that I implemented worked really well for me. I kept working. I kept having money coming in. I kept having a salary, all of these things, right? Until you can make the full jump commitment into full time, have
Yeah.
something else. You're not
Yeah.
too busy. I'm really sorry for people to feel that like just get up earlier. You know, You can take the day if you want to sleep all day Sunday, sleep all day Sunday, but work
Yeah.
those other days.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm really glad you made that point, because I think there's this romantic notion of the leap to solopreneurship with no safety net, no planning, nothing, right? And I think the problem with that is when when you're operating from a position of famine, when there's nothing coming in and only money going out, you make bad decisions, right?
Oh,
Because
easily, yeah.
you're not thinking straight, you're concerned about things you shouldn't be. And I always say, use your paycheck as venture capital. That's what
Right.
exactly the way you described it, right? Build it to the point where it's the side hustle becomes enough, strong enough for you to make that full-time leap.
I
So
think people
I
have
think that's
also
a
made
real,
the mistake, and there seems to be a bit of a theme of this, and you probably will know this from the past as well, where founders come up with the idea, but they don't want to pay for it. Right?
yeah,
Everybody's like, I've got this amazing idea. It's going to make you millions of dollars and you need to invest. And you don't have the same care for the money that your company is creating if you haven't got your own skin in the game. And I think that's the killer there is make the idea, build the product, show proof of concept, be in market making sales, and then go after money. Because if you're able to show all of this data at the front, once you've done everything, people are more willing to say yes. They just are. So I think
yep.
that's the other kicker there as well, is it's, a couple of years of pain to, you know, work for somebody else, make the money and work on your own thing. It's not going to kill you.
No, it's not. And I think that giving yourself that 3-year runway is really important to get a business off the ground, right? To make sure you
Yeah,
have that
minimum.
security. Yeah. So that's great. So if we were to grab coffee 3 years from now, I know 5 years from now you want to be back in Australia, but 3 years from now, what do you want to have achieved? What's different? What have you built? Who have you become?
Well, first and foremost, I know you love Australia, so you can come to Australia for a coffee in 5 years. You're more than welcome to come to Australia and coffee for 5 years.
I'll take you up on that.
Um,
Yeah.
so I would like full saturation here in Georgia. I definitely like some team members, whether they are a brokering company, like a broker distribution company, the where I've got the salespeople under their umbrella, or even my own. Um, definitely more states, more marketing on the advertising side, where it's maybe doing a tasting on live television, like Good Morning America or CBS, or something along those lines. Um, I'm a big fan of corporate responsibility. We already do certain charity work within the company itself, just some small things to drive awareness, and I like giving back. So, definitely something bigger in the charitable space as well. And then ultimately, best case scenario, we get a huge investor. They decide to come on board. They take a big chunk. They really invest in the company. I'd like to do a non-alcoholic version. So I think protein waters are definitely taking off. A lot of them are whey based, whey isolate, dairy, that sort of thing. We keep it in the same vein where it's gluten free, dairy free, vegan, that sort of thing. But maybe, a non alcoholic version and maybe another couple of flavors. I don't know in that sort of department there, but definitely, a team, growth, more states, that sort of thing. I think people sell out too quickly. They look for the cheap escape. I understand it's after a couple of years of eating ramen noodles and somebody throws you a turkey dinner. It's tough to say no, but stick it out for a little while. So I think, and then obviously, at least having some plans in place to go home for sure.
Yeah, and I'm definitely going to take you up on that. We can go and watch India play Australia at the Gabba. I've always wanted to do that.
Mate, I'll take you to the MCG at the Boxing Day test. That's one of the best. We can absolutely do that.
Awesome. So, if we've touched on a lot of themes, but if you had to give one piece of advice to someone wanting to start their solopreneur journey, what would you tell them?
Just commit. Go all in, right? Don't think about it. Don't kind of want it. Don't take your time to think about what you want to do, right? Let's say you want to be the next stationary queen of New York, okay? Plan it, get it down and commit. Just go all in on it, because at the end of the day, the only person that has to live with it is you. And if you kind of half-ass it and then it doesn't work, you have to live with that, right? So if
Yeah.
you're going to do it, put the plan in place and then commit. Just go all in.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'd rather not lie on my deathbed, regret not having done something,
Right.
than actually having done it and failed. Right? That I don't mind.
I would rather sit on the back porch with a bunch of cool stories of how I failed than never having tried.
Yeah, exactly. Same here. So, is there anything you'd like to share with our listeners that we haven't covered?
I think the entrepreneur life, it's can be a little bit lonely, right? It can be a bit rough. It's very unpredictable. Social media will tell you that it happens in 6 months. Okay. It's going to take twice as long. It's going to cost twice as much. It's going to hurt twice as bad. It's going to suck twice as everything. Everything, all of it is going to be just as bad, right? And most of these problems are completely out of your control, right? Trump put tariffs on China and all of a sudden we've got, logistics problems, right? That's not my fault, but it is something that I have to deal with. So I think, what I would say for any solopreneur that's listening, make sure that you are excited about what you're doing, right? Pick the industry that you can stay in love with because it's going to test you, and then talk to everybody. Everybody. Right? The only reason I'm on this podcast with you now is because on LinkedIn you put up a thing saying you were looking for people and this, that, the next. Things take time. Right? That was, I don't even know, 6 weeks, 8 weeks ago, whatever it was. But these things take time. So understand that even something small where you are booking in something with somebody is going to take longer than you think it is. So
Yeah.
understand that following up, people forget they've got lives, kids, family, they've got everything that is pulling them away from you. Remember that it's going to take time and just be patient. Patience is key. I think, what was the phrase that I used the other day with somebody else? Aggressive patience. So I understand it's going to take a long time, but I'm aggressive in how I try to get there.
Yeah.
That
I
would,
like
that,
that.
if I'm going to leave you with a tagline, aggressive patience.
I might have to steal that, Christopher. That's really good. I like that. Yeah. So, and you're right. Patience is important, but not just sitting still and waiting for things to happen. You don't lie back on your bed and say, okay, let everything come to
I
me.
sent
So I
one
like that
email, they're going to
aggression.
get back to me.
Yeah,
No, they're not. Nope.
exactly. The
Nope.
world will find me. No, it won't. Yeah. So that is a great way to get to a rapid fire round. So I'm just going to throw
Sure.
5 questions at you. So one thing Australians understand about hospitality that Americans should steal.
Oh, that is a good one. Speed of service. Speed of
Okay.
service. Yeah. So we don't make tips the way Americans do. So I find Americans have a tendency to sometimes be a bit lax because it's almost guaranteed, whereas we're fighting for every tip that you'll give us. So, we'll have if you have this much left of a drink, would you like another one? Let me get you another one. Right. We've really got that, drive and speed of service thing down.
Love it. If Mate were a person at a party, how would they be dressed?
I mean, there's so many answers. Look, my immediate thought process is he's in a pair of thongs / flip flops, pair of shorts, singlet, right? He's classically Australian. Like it's just Crocodile Dundee, maybe. I don't know. He's Steve Irwin, right? However those guys dressed, I reckon that would probably be how he would be dressed for sure.
So clearly the Mate brand, part of the
Right.
brand personality wins over here.
Right.
Getting that sense. If you could change your job title from owner to something that actually describes what you do every day, what would it be?
The Aussie problem solver, I guess, is probably a good one.
I like that. Most surprising thing you learned while living with David and Victoria Beckham, and don't say anything that'll get us both sued.
Oh, no, you're fine. They are normal humans. They are
Wow.
absolutely normal. So I'll give you a quick story. I know we're almost out of time, but I was making him breakfast, or the chef was making him breakfast. I was making him a coffee. He gets a phone call, walks off, comes back in. He's like, "Footy training starts next week. Skinny milk in the coffee, and make it one sandwich, not two." They're just normal people. Yes, they're celebrities, but in their house, they're just normal people.
I think you're going to make a lot of people happy and a lot of people
Right.
unhappy with
Yeah,
that answer.
of
But,
course.
that's the world we live in now. Um, what do you think young founders are being lied to about?
Time, the amount of time it takes. Don't
Going back
believe
to
it,
the aggressive
right?
patients.
It
Yeah.
it's it everything takes time. You're not gonna buy the Lamborghini in 5 years. You're just not. If you were doing it legally, if you're doing it correctly, if you're doing it properly, you're not gonna have the Lambo in 5 years. You're just not. And, Andy Frisella of First Form, is a wonderful example of this, where he will sit there and go and says in the first 10 years of him being in business, he made $55,000, him personally. Now the guy has a car collection worth 50 million, right? Everything takes time. You build it right, the money will come. Focus on building the brand and the product, the money will follow.
Yeah. And I think that's great advice to end the show on. So thank you so much, Christopher, for
Thank
all
you.
the fun chat and for all the stories that you shared.
Thank you.
Appreciate
It
it.
was it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Christopher's story is a great reminder that solopreneurship is rarely the clean, linear, heroic leap that social media loves to mythologize. Here are my key takeaways. The first takeaway is this: perspective beats motivation. Christopher said something in this conversation that I keep coming back to. He talked about self doubt. He said at least once a week he wakes up thinking, what am I doing? Why am I putting myself through this? And I know every solopreneur listening, myself included, knows this exact feeling. But the interesting part wasn't the feeling, it was his answer. He doesn't try to manufacture motivation. He has a system: bathroom, water, breakfast, gym. He gets moving. The endorphins kick in, the list gets open, the emails get sent, and by 9:30, he's out of the funk. Here's why this matters for you. Motivation comes from action, not from some mindset trick you learn to master first. If you continue to sit and wait for that feeling to pass or fight it, you'll simply dwell on it and sink deeper into that abyss of self doubt. But if you act, the act of doing actually creates a different kind of energy, one built on positive motion. So build your own default playbook like Christopher had for those hard mornings. Do the 3 or 4 things like I do. Mine includes opening what I call the pat on the back folder. I actually keep past client wins and thank you notes. And on bad mornings, I don't need a pep talk. I need my brain to remember the impact I know I'm already having. The second takeaway is about brand. Now, if your category doesn't exist, you may have to name it yourself. When Christopher described his product as wellness adjacent, that wasn't a clever marketing phrase. That was a necessary brand decision. He's selling vodka protein water, which doesn't fit neatly into the alcohol category, nor does it sit in the wellness category. So he had to create his own bucket and hand it to his customers with the brand name on front. Now, the reason that's smart is because people don't buy products they can't categorize. If their brain has nowhere to put it, they have no reason to buy it. For solopreneurs, this matters more than you think. If your work doesn't sit neatly into coach or consultant or strategist, if you have to explain yourself in 3 or 4 sentences before people actually understand what you do, that's not depth. You're just creating friction. So don't force prospects to build a mental category or do the work of deciphering what you do. Make it easy for them. If you get that right, you'll also spend a lot less time convincing people that you're worth listening to. The third takeaway is an important one. Your network is your sales force. The story Christopher told us about his first case of Mate is one that you should walk away remembering. He didn't run an ad campaign. He didn't hire a sales rep. He walked into his neighborhood liquor store where he'd been a customer for years, owned by Indian guys. And because they'd bonded over their shared love of cricket, that relationship is what got the first case of Mate on the floor. Now, in a world drowning in cold automated outreach and now AI generated outreach tools, your unfair advantage is not a fancy tool, but the people who already know you. Before you spend another dime on a monthly subscription for a cold outreach tool, sit down and make a list of every person who already knows you and trusts you. Past clients, ex-colleagues, old bosses, peers, college friends, and people in your wider network. That is your outreach list. Not because they'll all buy from you, but because that outreach will multiply. They're likely to know someone who needs exactly what you're selling. And when they recommend you, there's already a layer of trust built in. My challenge to you this week is to apply Christopher's aggressive patience test to your business. Make 2 columns. On the left, list things in your business that genuinely take time. Building partnerships and relationships, the category you're shaping, your authority. These are things where patience is the strategy, and rushing them will only break them, or you'll do them in a half-assed way. On the right-hand side, list the things you've been telling yourself just takes time, but actually don't need to. The follow-up email you've been avoiding sending, or the pricing conversation you've been dreading having, the lead magnet that has been almost ready for 6 months. Now be honest, because most of us confuse the two. We tell ourselves we're being patient when we're actually being passive, and we get aggressive about the wrong things, the things that need time and space to breathe, while sitting on the things we could move on this afternoon. Aggressive patience means knowing the difference. Thanks for listening to Unfiltered Solopreneur. If this episode made you realize your brand still feels scattered, or you're tired of needing 3 sentences to explain what you do, that's exactly what a brand clarity session is for. It's free. I'm offering a limited number of them, and in 45 minutes, we look at your messaging live, find the friction, and you'll walk away with 2 specific pivots you can apply this week. The link is in the show notes. Until next time, keep breaking free from the corporate grind, and remember, your story is your most powerful asset. Live solo or die corporate.